Hello, my name is Jonathan and welcome to part 2. This is software design from the beginning. So switching over to our view here, this is where we left off last time. What I've added is today's topics, the humble line, and we're going to discuss how the line fits in here. Now just before we do, I just want to point out that without lines you can pretty much make a lot of cohesion and a lot of understanding about a system quite simply, and that's something that we can use to our advantage. Without lines, we can still reason and still make cohesion and relationships. By putting a boundary around these things, we understand that there's a relationship with these things. It might not be as clear as we need it to be. It might not be as momentous as we need it to be, right? So the line can be an additional thing to understand. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this out. Let's grab animal there and show how the relationship forms. So if I say that cat is an animal, I draw a line. I want to be careful not to confuse this with UML. I just want to draw a simple line. So if I start drawing things like this, I am drawing a relationship between these things. Now this relationship might be obvious or intuitive based on the labels or the text that we have on the box, but sometimes it might not be. So we might have to say that, you know, a bear, and we might want to come in here and say is an animal. Right, for example, and this is once again a form of a label on a line talking to the other box, right? So there's a relationship between these two boxes. Now this kind of relationship sits at a level between two boxes, and that level seems adequate. But if I had to do something like that, I hope you can see that that would seem entirely wrong, that seems inadequate, that this is not the right kind of thing, and probably because the level that on which we're talking, right, the level of that object and this boundary seems intuitively as if it is two different layers. So if I did something like that, one could understand, oh, that is a little bit more interesting. That does seem plausible, that a boundary for logistics and other things inside might have a relationship with trucks and vehicles. And if I had a boundary around this, you'll notice that the boundary relationship could make sense as well. So just by putting a boundary around that and dragging it there is more sensibility. Now this, to be fair, I drew it around this one first, and this one is kind of a haphazard kind of idea here. You can see that even internally this boundary is not holding itself too well. We've got a thing, we've got a dog, we've got pets. It's not a very good sort of cohesive or abstraction. It's not very good. So let's change this completely. So if I had to say that we've got an animal, cat and bear, we might want to bring all of this into the mix. I'm just going to move that over there, bring that back and expand this out and say, well, there's the dog, there's the goat, and we're going to draw all of these things here and draw the relationship to the animal. And now you can see that that's going to make much more sense. Okay, just by using lines and boxes, we can have some kind of understanding. This isn't a software artifact understanding. I just want to point that out. What I'm not doing, I'm not drawing UML, I'm not doing object-oriented coding here. I am purely drawing boxes and labels and boundaries and lines. And so it's very, very simple to get an understanding of a system with this kind of basic elements, and that's why they are the first two laws. Let's talk about the line a little bit more. If I take the line and I say, well, you know, to me, if I draw an arrow, it means something. Well, that could be the way that we formalize the line in some way, and that is in the direction of UML. So if I did something like that, it would mean something in UML. Is UML still used today? Absolutely. Is it worth learning? Absolutely. Okay, That's debatable, by the way. Right, to me, UML still has a place. There are other types of illustrative kinds of things, and there's obviously this technique, which is very, very general. Let's have a look. So if I say that there's an animal and I want to draw a thing, what I might do is have a relationship here from animal to thing. And now I've got some kind of relationship between that. If I say pet, I might want to say, well, this is a label. I feel that that could be, a label describing that system. So the line is a very good tool for linking things that might also be within different boundaries. So for example, let's say I wanted to indicate whether a truck was required to move the animal. I could say, well, a bear over there is required for the truck. And if I had, some other kind of transport vehicle here, let's say I had a minivan, and I could say, well, the dog can go in the minivan. Then I can start doing things like that. I'm drawing from here. Obviously, all of these things are linked to these vehicles. I can label it as a vehicle, but specifically, I can draw a mapping or a relationship between the bear and the truck, the dog, and the minivan. And this might be a good way of reasoning between boundaries, but also within things between boundaries. The next kind of step I want to show you for the line is how you can draw the process. And really, it's quite simple. What we do is we draw a line and we draw a box on the line. Right? So that's the easiest way. I'm going to neaten this up in a second. And what I can do is I can say, well, this is a line. The line travels through. There it goes, and at this point this is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3. And we often do things like this. We often draw lines to represent a flow. And you can see that because this kind of looks sequential and linear, you can kind of see some kind of flow. Without me really saying too much about it, it looks like a flow. And what I might describe in terms of this process is I might say that the bear is loaded onto a vehicle and delivered, for example. Okay, so in this kind of scenario, some kind of process points, and I can even link it from the bear. That's the wrong connection to make, I'm sure. I can draw that that's the bear there, or that's the boundary that it comes from, that the vehicle comes from this side, and delivered we don't have any concept for at the moment. And I can link this up. I don't have to link it up, but there you go. Just the line showing that you can. You can put arrows on this to point it in a certain direction to say that there is a flow. And obviously this leads into something more complicated like a workflow diagram, for example. The basics of any workflow diagram is a box and a line. Right. Subtraction. So once you start building diagrams like this and they start getting fatter and fatter, once I've got a new concept over here, there's another concept, and I've got another concept over here. Believe me, in any system, this is very easy to get to. Very, very easy to get to. Concepts like this grow tremendously complicated very, very quickly. And in this kind of strange scenario, it's better to actually say, well, that is that, so I'm going to remove it. In fact, that whole section here is a generalization of this, so I'm going to remove it. This has a relationship here that's fine, but these things can be abstracted away and I can remove it. So the act of removing or subtracting things, saying that we don't need a bear anymore, forget the bear, let's take the bear out of the equation, we're only going to move a dog, for example, you can see that I'm simplifying. And simplification is very, very important. So the line represents the connections between different boxes and boundaries, even labels to be more accurate. The line suggests the relationship The relationship can be dictated in any manner that you choose. You can draw a dotted line, a dashed line, you can draw an arrow on both ends. The way that you draw those things means something to you, and you can decide what that means. The line symbolically also represents subtraction and how important it is to actually remove things from the first step. In other words, removing boxes. So if I have too many boxes and I have to distinguish between those things, I can have a terrible time in code. It is very easy to get carried away within an illustrative kind of model like this, right? When you're thinking and designing and trying to figure things out, it's very easy to get lost in it, to keep adding to, oh, what about that? Oh, what about this? And just keep moving ahead without sort of taking into account whether it's really required or not. So you have to check yourself. Every so often you have to go in and say, do I need X? Am I going too far? What checklists you might have would determine perhaps what kinds of things you have. So requirements, for example, some kind of requirements checklist. Other forms of checklists as well. We'll get that into that in another video. Okay, so that's very, very important. So the quick recap of episode 1 and 2 is that we have a box. A box represents things. We can use them to reason about lists of things within a domain. The domain language, well, we should try and keep to a domain language or whatever we're talking about. We can list those things. We can draw them cohesively inside of boundaries. We can link them with lines and draw relationships between them. This formulates the most fundamental parts of software design. We're going to look at abstract things next. So we're going to look at, what these kind of things might mean, what generalizations could be implemented, and that sort of abstract nature. And then in episode 4, we'll go back down to earth and talk about the iterative checklist, which is the third law of software design. Thank you for watching. As usual, please like if you like it. Please subscribe if you wanted to get notified. Press the bell, and most of all, if you know of anyone who'll be intrigued or who could learn and benefit from these videos, please give them a heads up. Thank you for watching.